When the Legends Died, Chapter 18. He met them at the foot of Horse Mountain. There were only two of them, Benny Grayback and an old man called Fish. Fish was known as a tracker because he sometimes found lost horses by following their footprints, especially after a rain when the ground was muddy. The agent had said the boy probably would go to Horse Mountain, so that is where they went to look for him. They were just starting to circle Horse Mountain when the boy came down the valley and saw them. He stopped and waited, and they saw him, and Benny said, "There he is." Fish said, "I have found him, as I said I would." The boy came up to them, and Benny said, "We came after you, Thomas Black Bull, to take you back to the reservation." Thomas shrugged. "I will go back," he said in English. They had a pack horse. Benny told Fish to divide the pack, put part of it on their saddle horse so the boy could ride on the pack horse. "I should make you walk," he said to Thomas, "but you would walk slow, and I am in a hurry to get back. Shall I tie you on the horse, or will you promise not to try to run away?" "I will go back," the boy said again. Fish helped him up onto the pack horse, and they went back down the valley to Town and the agency and the school. They were 2 days going back, and the boy did not try to run away. The next day, after he returned to school, Thomas Black Bull went to the barber and had his braids cut off. The next morning he put on his shoes instead of his moccasins, and not once after he returned did he speak Ute. He spoke to no one except when he was spoken to, but when he did speak it was in English. Within a month Miss Ellis told him that if he kept on as well as he was doing, he would speak English as well as any boy in the school by next spring. Because of the trouble over the basket, they did not send him back to Dolly Beaverfoot's class. Instead, Ed Porter took him back into the cobbler's shop. But now that he knew about the boy's skill with his fingers, he gave him rawhide and horsehair and started him plaiting quirts and fancy bridles. As he had expected, the boy was almost as skillful at this as he had been at basketry. He'd even made up his own designs for the horsehair work. He still had no friends, however. Several of the girls admired him and would have liked to be friends, but he was, as they said, always somewhere else. He seemed unaware of their existence. The boys who had taunted him now left him alone. They knew about what a beating he had given Luther Spotted Dog and that other boy in the horse barn. Besides, he often carried one of the rawhide quirts he made in the leather shop. So the winter passed, and when he got the periodic reports about Thomas, the agent said, "That boy has settled down. We'll make a farmer out of him yet, or something." The winter passed, and late March came. There were catkins on the willows and tassels on the aspens. Spring was coming to the lowlands, and the snow was beginning to melt in the mountain valleys. Bears would soon be coming out of hibernation. It was the time for the bear dance, the traditional ceremony at which the Utes used to gather and dance and visit after the winter's isolation. In the old days, it was a time of courtship among the young folks as well as for singing the old songs to the bears. But now only the old people remember the bear dance in late March. It interrupted spring work on the farms, so the agency people had persuaded the young folk to change the old ways and wait for May, after the corn was planted, to hold the bear dance. Thomas Black Bull, seeing the tassels on the aspens and the spears of new grass and the changes in the days, sunrise to sunset, knew what time it was in the year. He knew the bears would soon be leaving their winter dens to travel, to claim their old ranges, to challenge intruders and fight their fearful battles among themselves. He felt these things in his blood. Then a moonlit night came, and he sat in his room and knew what was going to happen. He hoped it would happen, and he wished it would not happen. He waited, and the cattle bawled in their pens. The horses snorted and raced about their corrals. He opened his window. In the moonlight he saw the bear beside the horse-breaking pen. It stood there, nosing the air, then shuffled its feet like a great shaggy dog, and nosed the air again. It whined softly. Other windows opened. Someone shouted in alarm. Thomas picked up a heavy quirt and hurried from his room. He went down the hallway, down the stairs, and out into the moonlight. He ran along toward the corral, and he began singing the bear's song. The bear came to meet him. He stopped singing and shouted warning words, then angry words. The bear stopped and growled, then came on, whining again. The boy screamed at the bear in Ute. It stopped again, and the boy went up to it, swished the quirt in its face, and shouted, "Go away, go back home to the mountains." The bear rose on its hind legs and spread its forepaws as though to tear the boy to pieces. Its teeth were white in the moonlight. It was a 2-year-old now and stood taller than the boy. The boy flashed it across the face with the quirt again and again, screaming, "Go, go, go!" The bear dropped to all fours, whimpering. It nosed the boy's hands, and it cried like a child, and the boy dropped the cord, put an arm around its neck, buried his face in its fur, and wept. He wept until the bear drew away and licked his face, and whimpered and licked his face again. The boy backed away. "I do not know you," he cried. "You are no longer my brother. I have no brother. I have no friends." Then he said, "I had a brother, but when I went to find him and sang my song to my brother, he would not listen. Now there is nobody." He stood silent in the moonlight, his head bowed, and the bear swayed from side to side, from foot to foot, moaning. "Go away," the boy said. "Go, or they will kill you. They do not need guns to kill. They kill without guns. Listen, I speak truth. They will kill you. Go away." The bear still stood swaying, moaning. He put a hand in the fur on the bear's neck, and he said, "Come, I will go a little way with you." And they slowly walked away from the horse-breaking pen, the boy and the bear in the moonlight. They walked across the grounds towards the aspens with catkins like chipmunk tails. They walked among the trees and into the shadows, and after a little while there was a sound of the sorrow song. It was a song so desolate that the coyotes answered it from the gullies beyond. But the coyotes' cries were not so full of wailing as that song. The coyotes have brothers. After another little while the boy came back out of the shadows of the trees, walking alone. He walked with the weariness of one who sings the going away song for the only other person in the world, but he sang no song. Men and boys were standing beside the doorway, but he seemed not to see them. They stepped aside, made way for him, and later they said it was like seeing a strange man, a remote, terrible man, not a boy. He walked past them, along the hallway, and upstairs to his room. The next day he went to his classes as though nothing had happened, but those who looked into his eyes saw something there that made them afraid to talk to him. Nobody spoke of what happened that in the moonlight.